Afrique Travel, c'est le voyage en toute tranquillité, en toute beauté, de votre maison jusqu'à votre...
Hot mix mixing.
Du nouveau à Minneapolis, Tempo Afrique Travel. Vous voulez voyager? Achetez vos billets d'avion à l'agence de voyage Tempo Afrique Travel. Avec l'agence de voyage Tempo Afrique Travel, pas de problème de connexion, pas de problème de transfert de vol. Avec l'agence de voyage Tempo Afrique Travel, c'est le voyage en toute tranquillité, en toute...
Report with Ellie Naimo at Tempo Afrique TV. This week we have about 5 topics that we will cover that is going on around the world, especially there in Africa. One of the first topic is about the block sanctions for the coup states that has been hit. If you guys remember some of those stories that we covered in the last, that took place in the last couple of years. So with many of the countries that had a military coup, which have already taken a wave across Africa. Mali, if you guys remember Mali, it was underwent coups in August 2020 and May 2021, followed by Guinea in September 2021, and Burkina Faso this January of this year. So just today in Ghana's capital, Accra, West African leaders and heads of the Economic Community of West Africans, which is also short for ECOWAS, they got together to review sanctions that have been imposed to 3 military rule countries in their volatile region, including other guarantees for restoring civilian rule in Mali, Guinea, and Burkina Faso. So the fearing on regional military takeovers, ECOWAS has imposed tough trade and economic sanctions against Mali, but laser punishment against Guinea and Burkina. ECOWAS in January imposed a trade and financial embargo on Mali after its military government unveiled a scheme to rule for 5 years. For the next summit, no decision has been made for the 3 countries. The sanctions had badly hit poor and landlocked Mali, whose economy is already under severe strain from a decade-long jihadist insurgency. On Wednesday, Malian authorities approved a plan to hold presidential elections in February 2024. The vote will be presided by a referendum on a revised constitution in March 2023 and legislative elections in late 2023. Some of the Mali's top diplomat, Abdoulaye Diop, on Friday said the recent political developments were moving the country towards a lifting of the sanctions. According to a new electoral law, there are potential blocks in coming to an agreement. In Burkina Faso, another Sahel country caught up in the jihadist turmoil, and Guinea, which have faced harsher sanctions, have so far only been suspended. So as the talks continues, the situation appears more complex in Guinea, whose junta has refused an ECOWAS mediator and announced a 36-month transition, a period that African Union chairman and Senegalese President Macky Sall has described as unthinkable. ECOWAS avoided ruling on sanctions at on June 4th meeting and decided to give itself another month to negotiation. And along with what the government said, it wanted to reassure its ECOWAS brothers of its commitment to undertaking a peaceful and inclusive democratic transition. And Guinea's military regime met the main political parties and have made their participation in dialogue conditional on the nomination of the ECOWAS mediator. And So that's an update of what is going on here. We have a special guest that is going to join us on some of these topics as well. And we would love to hear his input on what is going on in this case and in this matter. So Kofi Passo is on live now on the show. So please welcome. Thank you for joining us here on Ellie Naimel Talk Show on the English version of what is going on in Africa. Is there anything you'd like to add on this condition that is happening with the meeting?
Thank you so much, Inema. All the pleasure is mine to be on Tempo Africa to talk about and to reflect on these sensitive issues, I would say topics. So the pleasure is all mine. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you.
Absolutely. So the talk, as the talk continue, this is the question I probably would want to ask you. ECOWAS, where did they talk lead from this, and do you have any thought of why some of these countries are not coming to an agreement for the elections coming up and for those 3 countries that have been going through the coups?
Are you on the topic of Mali?
Yes. So the sanctions that were blocked for the 3 countries that went through severe coups in the last few years, which is Guinea, Mali, and Burkina Faso.
Yes, I will say, if you allow me, that embargo imposed on Mali for let's say the coup d'etat, it did not work. The embargo has rather hit the face of those who imposed the embargo on Mali. I will talk about Senegal, for example. I will talk about Burkina Faso and Cote d'Ivoire. As you know, what is at the center of the news right now is that Mali is the country that furnish most of the meat. I would say the lamb, the
landlocks.
Lamb to for the let's say Tabaski, which is around the corner. And right now, because of the sanction, Mali is not able, as usual, to sell lamb to Cote d'Ivoire, Burkina Faso, and other countries. That's number 1. Number 2 is that I'll come back to Burkina Faso and Guinea, Equatorial Guinea, but let me stay on Mali, because that is the critical point, the important point of the sanction. Okay. If no, I know you are aware that Russia has given Mali a huge amount of 1 second, please.
And I'm also curious to know what are these main sanctions as well?
Say that again, please.
What are these main sanctions that they're talking over?
Yes, what I'm saying is that Mali miraculously has been even better when the sanction has been imposed on them. If you see, they have recruited new workers. They have doubled the salary of workers, whereas the sanction target is that Mali government will dislocate and cool down in 2 weeks, but nothing of that happened. So right now, they have lifted the sanction on embargo on Mali with the 1 condition, and the condition is that none of the members of the government, the current government, is allowed to be a candidate for the presidential election.
Okay.
That, okay, I know it's diplomacy. Somebody can just resign from the government and then come back 6 months to be a candidate. So that's Mali. the ECOWAS has no choice other than lifting the sanction on Mali. That's what they did. Okay. Now we come to Burkina Faso and Guinea. The problem is that they are still working on their case. No clear line has been defined right now about the embargo and the sanction. Mm-hmm. So what I think, they might need another summit or meeting of ECOWAS to decide the fate of Guinea, Equatorial, and Burkina Faso. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Yes, it's definitely a lot more clear on that, and hopefully they do come to a final decision on how they can ease some of these sanctions going on in Mali, Guinea, and Burkina Faso. So on the other side of East Africa, there is a message from Pope Francis for Congo and South Sudan. On Saturday, Pope Francis issued a video message on the day he was supposed to have begun a week-long pilgrimage to the two African countries, which is Congo and South Sudan. Francis had to cancel the trip because of a knee pain, apparently, and that has made walking and his standing difficult. So he wasn't able to make his journey to Congo and South Sudan. And he decided to send out a message with the video to urge the people and leaders of both countries to turn a page. It is about time. Things need to change in those countries that are pointed out. And first, a new path of reconciliation, peace, and development. In his message, Pope Francis said he was greatly disappointed by the turn of the events and promised to visit as soon as possible. So many of you that probably know the living conditions and what is happening in Congo and South Sudan. So I'll say South Sudan specifically, since we have more details about that. Due to the long war, people are now heading into the 10-year independence, which will be next week. And that is a long term enough for people to reconciliate back to their normal life and to start building into the country again. So with Pope Francis getting involved in some of these reconciliation and also bringing change to the country, we only wait to see till his visit and see what he has planned for both of the two countries. To continue on, he urged the people of both countries to not allow themselves to be robbed of hope, despite the value, political instabilities, exploitation, and poverty that has had pained them for so long. And some of these are really good encouragement that would be given to the leaders and the people of the country. In his message, he added, "You have a great mission, all of you, beginning with your political leaders," Francis said. "It is that of turning a page in order to blaze new trails, new paths of reconciliation and forgiveness, of serene coexistence and of development." So that's the message for Congo and South Sudan from Pope Francis. Now continue on to what is going on in North Sudan. There's a protest that continue to happen, and things got very much more severe. If you guys remember from the last year, there was a coup, a military coup, and the people stood up against it, protest. They do not want the military coup that is taking on in North Sudan. So about 9 people were killed on Thursday in a demonstration against the country's ruling. Generals leading to thousands of protesters who went to the streets of Khartoum on Saturday using shields and throwing stones in the retaliation at the vehicle, while a police vehicle was firing tear gas towards the protesters. Eventually, the demonstrators moved later outside of Al-Jada Hospital, where many injuries protested are still being treated. Protester Aisha Al-Samani said she took the streets to restore the transition to a civilian rule and end the military coup, with no room for compromise with the military on power sharing. The United States and others in the international community condemn the violence in East African nation, which has been rocked by nearly weekly protests since the October of 25th last year. And this is when the coup took place in the transition to democracy. Sudanese military authorities have met the protests with a deadly crackdown as it continues, which has so far killed 113 people, including 18 children. Photographs of the dead protests were posted online, in some cases in an effort to identify them. The Sudan's Doctor Committee, a medical group that monitors casualties from demonstrations, said security forces shot and killed 9 people, including a child, in a near Khartoum during the rallies on Thursday. Thursday demonstration coincident with widespread internet disruption. And this is what's still going on in North Sudan in order their government and to remove the military share power as well. And Kofi Faso, is there anything you'd like to add to what is happening there in East Africa in general as a whole, as an example of what is happening in Sudan?
Okay, let me start with Sudan. I'll go to Sudan. I will talk about Ghana also, and I will finish with East Africa. Okay, the Sudanese problem is that, as you know, the country has been divided in two now. We have the North and the South Sudan, compared to just one piece of Sudan before the coup d'etat.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so what happened is
So it
that...
has a lot to do with dividing that country.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, of course. What's happening right now is that they say the government is conducting an investigation to determine who shot and killed those many people who were protesting against the government. But in a normal country, when there is a protest, the police will be there to safeguard the security of protesters. Even the military can be there, but they say that they don't know exactly those in the army that shot them, and they are still conducting investigation to determine who are responsible for the, I would say, bloodbath during the protest. Anyway, I would like to trust them. But what I'm saying is that this is typical of African governments. This is typical of the cynical, dictatorial government that they will not allow people to protest in peace and protect them.
Yeah.
So let's see, let's trust their good faith to see if they can come around and let us know exactly what happened and who shot those people dead. I'm going to come to Ghana before I restrict to East Africa in Congo. Ghana is one of the most advanced democracy practiced in West Africa. Elections are fairer compared to like Togo, compared to like Ivory Coast, compared to like Gabon. Ghana is a good democracy in Africa. But what happened last week? Nima, I know you are aware of that. Ghanaian organized a protest to march. Okay? It's a demonstration to denounce and call the government to the rise of costs in the country, which is due to COVID-19, a war in Ukraine, and all other things.
There's a lot of turmoil there, yeah.
Exactly. It's become very, very, very difficult for Ghanaians to cover expenses related to like rents, food, and other expenses. They came out empty-handed. They are not asking for the outstage of a departure of Akufo-Addo, their president. They are just want to draw the attention to the government on the high cost of living in Ghana. In Ghana, as far as I know, when I was started watching their democracy, no president has sent the military and the police to disband them and throw like 9 people in prison right now. They are in prison, and we have like a 19 or 20 wounded person. This is the first time we are seeing this in Ghana. Ghana is a model of democracy, but unfortunately with the Akufo-Addo alliance with France and the European Union, the country is descending into hell under our own eyes. So something needs to be done so that it stops. Now, you talk about Congo. If you allow me, I will be a little longer on Congo.
Okay.
Because it's a little complicated in Congo. What happened?
There's
Rwanda,
a lot happening in Congo.
Yes, exactly. Rwanda became one of the most developed countries in Africa right now. But if you see the source of their development, if you see where they find the resources, the natural resources to develop their countries, they steal it in Congo. This rebellion group called M23, I know you have heard about them.
Yes.
Is the stooge, okay, of Rwanda, and they create a disorder, and they are digging the resources of Congo to develop Rwanda, and Rwanda is backing M23. And this is a disaster.
Okay.
People are dying. Now
Yes.
we have United Nations there for more than 20 years. They are not doing nothing to stop the war, to stop the invasion of the east of Congo, Kivu, and other countries. So we are facing like an injustice. Why is it that after 20 years of the presence of United Nations mission, why is it that nothing has changed? It's still going on, and why is it that Rwanda is still digging resources from the underground of Congo to develop their country? If you have other question, I'm ready to elaborate and to come up with them. Thank you, Nima.
Yes, and you know, I don't know if I would call it fear anymore, but I don't know how long the hope can last with all of these corruptions that are happening in Africa. Like when you mentioned 20 years, and we don't know how long all of that is going to take place. You know, with what happened, let me start back with Sudan, as you mentioned earlier. I mean, when Sudan was won, we're not sure if it has gotten worse after, well, it has gotten worse after it has been divided completely. And of course, there were a lot of bad things happening in Sudan at the time due to the religion, different tribe, and things of that nature, which tribalism is always a thing there in East Africa. But it's very sad to see how things are going right now, and we're hoping that it doesn't lead to you know, not having a government or an endless civil war, kind of like what you see in Somalia, where in North Sudan, even the Darfur, they're still going through a lot of the challenges and the killing and the terrorism for about a decade now. So these are the things that are happening in Africa. You know, like you mentioned Congo. Congo is a huge melting pot with resources as well. And that it even supports sense resource connections to other African countries like Rwanda, as you mentioned. There's definitely a lot of clashes too between the tribalism. So, you know, what do you see in the next coming years? You know, with Africa always having these issues and continuing endless civil wars, is there a chance, are people fighting a lot harder than they used to and willing to sacrifice their whole life for like what is happening in Ghana as well? Like, what are your thoughts or your opinion on that?
Okay, thank you, Nima, for the question. If you want to know what I think personally
Yeah.
about the fate, let me say this,
Yes.
yeah, the future fate of Africa,
yes.
you know, especially East Africa, talking about Congo. And you can see that there is a huge change which is coming into the world, not only in Africa. Nima, it's not by chance that at the same time ECOWAS has imposed a sanction, fruitless sanction, no working sanction on Mali, which has destabilized the whole region. But if you take, for example, Mali, the sanction imposed on Mali has a negative effect on Senegal. It's one of the sanctioners. Côte d'Ivoire, which is one of the sanctioners, and all other countries surrounding Mali. Okay? What I'm saying is that at the same time, sanction on Mali is backfiring and is not achieving the objective and the target of those sanction. You will see that in the world, in the outer world, if you go to, for example, Europe, sanction imposed on Russia also are backfiring into the face of those who impose
Yes.
What I would like to say is that it looked to me like there's a divine synchronicity for a change of paradigm in the whole world. Those who used to lead the world, I'm talking about the Western countries, and once I say Western country, I will extend them to United States of America, Europe, and US. Do you think that it is by a pure hazard, a pure coincidence that at the same time,
that is a huge change, yes,
imposed on Mali, which backfired of imposes, those who impose the sanction by the help of Russia and other African countries, and the sanction imposed on Russia, which also has backfired to the face of the sanctions. I don't want to go too long. I don't know how much time you have, but if you see right now, Russia is selling more gas and oil than ever. If Russia is selling its gas and oil to just, let me name just two countries, China and India, we are talking about 2.5 billion population around the world. With their young population, they need Russia. So the sanction imposed on Russia by European, let's say European Union or NATO, of not buying oil from Russia as a backlash in their face. And let me tell you this before I go back to Africa, the most of the sanction. What is happening right now, if you follow the news, India is buying gas from Russia very cheap, transforming it and selling it to European country that has imposed sanction on Russia. Okay? Let me go to Mali. Mali, you know that you come into a fabrication or making of bread and macaroni and all those stuff. We have been, European Union have been deprived of Russian wheat, and they gave tons of wheat to Mali for free.
Wow.
So what I'm going to tell you that there is some sort of divine synchronicity. Okay? We are entering into a new world order. Not the new world order as they think, but always as the universe is thinking. Because there's a synchronicity in the problem of sanctioning or putting embargo on Russia, putting embargo on Mali. It has failed. It came and hit them in the face. So I will finish by talking about Congo. I think the problem is that if you look at the whole thing, you are aware that they brought the teeth of Lumumba to Congo as his corpse to be buried.
Okay.
What about all those damage they did in Congo before? What about reparation? What about justice in Congo? So what I'm saying is that I can see this on the plane of spirituality, if you don't mind me. The paradigm of the world where Europe is the boss. They can keep stolen African, sell them as goods. They can come back and dig our resources, and they can come out in the new colonialism right now, as we're saying, is going to be finished. It will take a time, but the end, the start of their end, as I would say, has started. That's what I need to do.
Well, hopefully that gets overturned somewhere down the line. So it's there's definitely a lot of changes along the way. Thank you so much for adding all of that in there. So now going on to what is happening in Libya. Libya stormed the parliament, and despite a year of tentative step towards unity after more than a decade of war, Libya appears to be sliding backward once again. Protesters stormed the seat of the House of Representatives in the eastern city of Tobruk on Friday night, ransacking its offices and torching part of the building. Protesters rallied in Tripoli and several towns in western Libya on Saturday, blocking roads and setting tires ablaze on fire. Residents of Libya's Tobruk condemned what happened in their city in the anger of the protests, which has exploded over deteriorating living conditions and political deadlock. The protesters, frustrated by years of chaos and division, called for the renewal of the current political class and for elections to be held. They also rallied against dire economic conditions in the oil-rich nation, where prices have risen for fuel and bread, and power outages are a regular occurrence. The protests included the neighborhoods of Wadi al-Rabi, southeast of Tripoli, and Tajora in the east. Other demonstrations took place as well in other neighborhoods such as Kod al-Shah and Abi al-Shahar, the unrest areas where there's a continuous rise of demonstration. Now, going back to what is the country is known for, it is divided on a constitutional framework for national elections. Representatives of both sides on Thursday failed at United Nations mediate talks to reach an agreement as well. So what I'd like to ask you on this case, so we can see the same pattern that is happening across Africa, involving the economic as well and the oil, and also, removing the governments and the demonstrations as well. Is there anything you would like to point out on the Libya's case across North Africa?
Okay, Nima, thank you for that sensitive issues on Libya. You are aware that in the protests, they have set ablaze the parliament, they set fire on the parliament, burned down completely. What is going on right here is that, let me go a little backward to set the foundation of what's going on in Libya and in Saharan African countries. The same institution called NATO that went to destabilize Libya if you go and search history, you'll know that Libya is one of the best countries in the world as far as human being protection is concerned. In Libya under Gaddafi, you have your health insurance.
There's that history too. We almost kind of forgot about that. Yes.
Okay. I'm telling you, universal health insurance was in Libya before going to some Western countries. Okay. So when we are talking about the problem in Saharan Africa today, in Burkina Faso, in what do you call it? Burkina Faso, Mali, and in Niger and other countries, the consequence of narrow destruction of Libya, the remnants are what is happening in the sub-Saharan country, especially the Saharan country right now. They went and killed Gaddafi for no reason. And the same NATO that wanted
So let me go back a little bit. So earlier you mentioned, so Libya used to be a part of the NATO's allies.
Okay. Yes, Libya was the best country in the world.
Okay.
But what happened is that Gaddafi started putting in place some pieces of independence of Africa by talking about satellites, by talking about a bank that he called African International Bank. So countries that go and ask for loan without interest. Okay. So it's a shortcutting the International Bank or all those banks, and satellites launching by Gaddafi.
Yes.
So they say we need to act fast and very fast. Now, Nicolas Sarkozy, the guy who was at the forefront of this crime, killing of Gaddafi and destruction for Libya, has a personal problem with Gaddafi. He took money of Gaddafi to launch his campaign, and he tried to kill him, and he killed him so that he doesn't come on top. So let me go back to what I was saying, is that now there are two factions in Libya. Okay? There are two factions on Libya. So the international community is supporting one of the factions against the other one.
Okay.
So there has been a negotiation covered and spearheaded by the United Nations. So Libyans were in hope, thinking that they will come to an agreement for election so that their suffering see an end. But unfortunately, 3 days ago, the negotiation did not yield anything. It failed. That's the reason why young men came out to protest and say that they are tired of the transition, which is taking too long. And they are tired of the implication of those countries, because we have right now, we have the United States, we have the European Union, we have Turkey, who are involved in the war in Libya right now. So they came out and say, we are tired. We want elections, free and fair election. We want to be free. We need a solution for our problem. And that's how they came in a violent protest. They went and set ablaze the parliament. They put it on fire. So that's the problem with Libya. So what I'm going to say is that, to conclude this portion, is that we need to remember history. If we don't remember history, if we don't go back to history to say what happened before, we are lost people. NATO is the one that created the problem in Libya by killing Gaddafi. So when they killed Gaddafi, they gave so much guns and arm to the terrorists, the rebel that killed Gaddafi, that after Gaddafi is dead, they took their arm and they descended onto a Saharian country, sub-Saharan country, like I named them, Niger, Burkina Faso, Mali. Those are the terrorists we are talking about right now, which are disturbing the peace of people in those countries. And if you look at that, if you see the whole thing, you will see that France is the one that is activating the system of the terrorists in the Sahrawi country, so they can come back and say, you need help. You must have our help because we are dying. So this is a case of a devilish situation when Europe and especially France is gaining from the terrorist activity in sub-Saharan countries, especially the 5 countries. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Great information. So we pray for the best and that this will continue for better changes. And now as we come towards the end of the report, our last topic that we're going to cover is what the business summit took place with the African Union and the EU as well. The war in Ukraine is the latest shock in hit global food production. Now, we talked about this and cover a lot about the food shortages that are taking on in Africa and try to prevent a huge, massive wave of famine, especially across Africa with this war happening, causing concern about the food security situation in Africa. Participants at the EU African Business Summit exchanged ideas on how the two continents can build a new partnership aimed at ensuring sustainable food security. With the European commercial banks, this was said by Solomon Gaymore, we are working to provide trade finance facilities. We are to reshare in their portfolios in terms of exposure to African industry and to ensure that the fertilizer and seeds that are needed on an emergency base do get delivered to Africa. This was announced by Solomon Goyner, was Vice President of the Africa Development Bank, stated. While the African farmers have landed, they must depend on their countries. They must depend on other countries for essential inputs such as the fertilizer. At the EU African Business Summit in Brussels, participants are calling for more private sector involvement and investment in the African agriculture. The war in Ukraine has not only caused a global grain shortage, but the fertilizer as well. This is both a challenge and an opportunity for African fertilizer makers. I think Africa, more than ever, needs reliable partners, all the stakeholders at the food value chain to stay with their partners and their customers on the continental level. We at OCP are well aware of our responsibilities to maintain our role as partners of Africa's Green Revolution, and this has been set by the OCP group, which they added. According to the experts, achieving a long-term food security in Africa will rest heavily on building resilient agriculture value chains, investing in climate change adaptation, infrastructure, and local manufacturing. So with the war in Ukraine affecting a lot of what is happening, especially the food, now the farmers are speaking out as well. So it's affecting the farmers on their fertilities. And a lot of these African countries also rely on the outside countries. What would you like to add on this meeting with the EU?
Okay, Nima, before I come back to try to get my perspective on the question, what you just read, what you just said, I would say that sometimes I ask myself, in which world are we living? Africa has the most fertilized land.
And I said that too, yes.
In the whole world. Normally, if things go according to normality, there's no way African countries will go and beg for food or for fertilizers in another country.
Yes.
Okay. If you go to what happened, I think it's at the beginning of last month, when the president of African Union, I named His Excellencies, Macky Sall, went to Russia to meet President Putin. What did he say? He said that, but we know that because of the war between Russia and Ukraine, the road of the wheat we delivered to other countries, because Russia and Ukraine delivers more than 50% of the wheat in the whole world. So when Macky Sall went to meet the Russian president, Vladimir Putin, he said that we are begging you, we plead you to release the wheat. If you don't do it, African country will die of hunger. Nema, how many persons eat bread, okay, in the morning in Africa? How many people eat bread in the morning, I mean, in Africa? That's the question. He went there because he had been sent by European Union to plead for the release of the wheat, on which they depend, or like 80%, okay? And if you see what happened, we need to read signs. There are signs. He stopped in Paris. He met French government to take instruction about what he's going to say in Russia. This is how I say it. Can be wrong, but this is how I say it. When he went there after meeting the Russian president, he came back again to Paris, and everything he said in Russia, most of them has been contradicted by his own self in Paris. So what I'm saying is that when we talk about the wheat, okay, being the source of food in Africa, and if it's not released, we are going to die of hunger, is absolutely false. This is a propaganda, okay? It's a lie. It's a big lie. It's not true.
Okay.
It won't happen. That's number one. Number two, we are talking about the fertilizers, like you say. If we have 60 years of independence, Neman, okay, we have all the resources in our country. I will take one country like Togo, where I'm from, okay? We produce, we have under our ground, we have so much mineral, okay, that produces cement. Out of that mineral, we can produce fertilizers in our country and sell it for less, okay? In the whole world, coming about phosphates, Togo is number 2 in quality. Maroc is Togo is number 1 in quality, and Maroc is number 2 in quantities. Okay, and we have those minerals everywhere. Go to Mali underground, we call it the desert. Okay, go to Niger underground, we have everything. I'm just going to take one example. This is Mali. Okay, to show you how they are trying to infantilize African people. Mali has recently discovered lithium. They have uranium. They have gold. They have every mineral, and even the underground water. Okay, the purest one is in Mali. Mali is number 2 when we compare to underground waters. Canada is number 1. Mali is number 2. What are we doing with all those researches? Just like somebody sitting on a gold mine and is dying of hunger, and it's poor. That's how I can describe the people of Africa. So to conclude and to answer the question definitely, we should not normally need help for food from Europe and the rest of the world, because we see on the most fertile land in the world. Thank you.
You nailed right on the spot. And sometimes when I think of, some of the connected politics that are happening is with the bigger countries, or let's say the elites, the people with the money and the power are buying lands in Africa, and now there is also reports that they are buying farmers in other countries as well. And if anything of that nature would happen in Africa, where, like you mentioned, we have the resources, we have everything, we're able to grow our own food. Could a lot of it has anything to do with some of these powerful leaders buying lands in Africa and actually owning them and selling it back to Africa? And I think that's still one of the most, elusive argument that is out there as well. And, like you said, it can never happen in Africa.
It doesn't make any sense.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't make any sense. And Nima, one more thing.
Mm-hmm.
If you see the war in Russia,
mm-hmm.
Let me go straight to the fact. The war is not between Ukraine and Russia.
Mm-hmm.
The war is really between Russia and NATO. Okay? Ukraine is being used as is a proxy war between the Western countries, mm-hmm. especially the NATO countries, and Russia. They are just using Ukrainian land to
mm-hmm.
conduct a war between the two entities, which is Russia on one side and NATO on the other side. Okay? We need to know how to read history. So I'm going to relate this to the consequence of the war in Africa. If you see Russia has taken food in Mali.
Mm-hmm.
Russia has taken food in Central Africa.
Okay.
Russia is partially taking food in Nigeria, in Cameroon, because those two countries, even though there's no Russian boots on the floor, they signed defense agreement with Russia. I'm talking about Nigeria, mm-hmm. which is one of the biggest countries in Africa, one of the most powerful countries in Africa, and Cameroon. So if you see that, remember, when the vote was on the table to condemn the war of, they say, quote unquote, the mm-hmm. aggression of Russia, aggression of Ukraine by Russia, if you see what happened is that most African countries, most Asian countries, they either vote against the European mandate or they abstain to vote. Okay? So what is happening, brother, is that the war in Ukraine also have a reflection on Africa. Russia is taking food, is taking ground in Africa, is taking countries that has been the domain, personal domain of France. One example is Mali. Mm-hmm. Russia is there, and Central African country, same thing. So they have to do everything to make sure that Russia does not take the leadership in the world, does not dominate the world. That also explains the war and the reaction, of course, of Europe on African perspective of the war in Ukraine. Thank you.
And I hope they succeed on it. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining our episode today on the report that we have going on in Africa. Again, thank you, Kofi Faso. So we'll see you again on our next report in next week or so. And also, I'd like to Make quick last announcements before we close the report here. If you're looking for something to do, to relieve your mind from everything that is going on in the world as well, here in Minneapolis, Awilo Alangumba will be in town. He's one of the two-generation legendary that is here right now in Minneapolis at Underground Cafe, starting at 10 o'clock p.m. tonight. So if you're looking to get out for 4th of July or looking for some, adventure to dance or to move, definitely, make your way to the Underground Cafe. And also Jay Uber, who is putting Ghana on the map as well, will be performing with Awilo as well. So if you know how to do your one-legged dance, which has been trending, go for it tonight. Otherwise, thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful night.
Now, Nima, I thank you very much, and also thank Tempo Africa TV for giving us the floor, okay, to talk about African issue, especially issue related to African liberalization, because what we have right now, we call them independence, but those are fake independence. Tempo Africa TV is fighting to make sure that we regain the true independence, and I'm part of that, and that's why I'm so happy that I have been invited on this panel. Thank you. The pleasure is all mine, and see you next week. Thank you, Nima.
Thank you so much, and much more to come.
Okay, take care. Good night.
C'est encore Yves Kenao, c'est toujours Yves Kenao qui revient. Cette fois-ci, pour vous dire que Tempo Afrique TV vous offre plus de 4000 chaînes de télévision. Les chaînes européennes, les chaînes américaines, les chaînes asiatiques, les chaînes africaines. À un prix imbattable. À un prix imbattable. Tenez-vous bien. $185 pour 12 mois, inclus le box. Alors, où est-ce que vous pouvez trouver mieux que ça si ce n'est pas sur Tempo Afrique TV? Mesdames, Messieurs, appelez seulement le 612 804 0295 et vous serez servi. Vous serez agréablement surpris de voir plus de 4000 chaînes de télévision rouler sur votre écran comme ça et vous choisissez laquelle vous voulez. Alors mesdames, n'hésitez pas. N'hésitez surtout pas et ne faites pas compter. Prenez votre téléphone, prenez-le tout de suite et appelez le 612, le 804, le 02 95. Nous sommes là, ici à Tempo TV, pour rendre votre vie simple et agréable. Alors, saisissez l'occasion. Donc, $185 pour toute une année, pour 12 mois, inclus le box. Quoi de mieux que ça?
Du nouveau à Minneapolis, Tempo Afrique Travel. Vous voulez voyager? Achetez vos billets d'avion à l'agence de voyage Tempo Afrique Travel. Avec l'agence de voyage Tempo Afrique Travel, pas de problème de connexion, pas de problème de transfert de vol. Avec l'agence de voyage Tempo Afrique Travel, c'est le voyage en toute tranquillité, en toute beauté, de votre maison jusqu'à votre destination. Votre satisfaction est notre plaisir.
Hot mix mixing.
My whole life, my father told me stories about moving to the United States. He would tell me that his brother, my Uncle George, was already living here and let my father stay with him for a while. Through my Uncle George, my father was introduced to our cultural organization here in America, who helped him make connections, apply for college, find his first job, and adjust to life in a completely different culture than he was used to. The cultural association helped him get started on his new life. My Uncle George would bring my father with him to the annual Summer Cultural Groups Festival, and later, he would bring me. It was incredible to see so many people of all ages laughing and celebrating with food and song and dance. It brought back the best feelings of home and gave my father the opportunity to pass his culture, language, and values on to me. My father and Uncle George were very close, so when George died last year, my father wanted to honor his wishes to be buried with a traditional ceremony back at his birthplace. My father told me that because Uncle George had cultural group life insurance, he was able to afford to bring George home and have the traditional burial George wanted. Though my father had been able to honor my Uncle George's wishes, it got me thinking about my own family. One day, I'd have to make the same arrangements for my own parents, and my wife's parents as well. Of course, we would want to bring them home and honor their wishes, but it would be a financial hardship for our family. There were a lot of things to think about, even though I really didn't want to think about them at all. When my father told me about cultural group life insurance, he told me it's intended to help families when they need it the most. It's not tied to an employer, so no matter where my career takes me, I'll always have coverage. The more people who participate and the younger they are, the more it helps keep the insurance premiums down for the entire association. Because my parents have cultural group term life insurance, there will be money available to help me provide the kind of service I want to give my parents. And by joining, I can put my mind at ease and continue to celebrate our traditions into the future. With cultural group life insurance, I can worry less and spend more of my time celebrating with the people who matter most to me.
Pour toutes vos informations en politique, en économie, en sport, en santé, retrouvez Yves Kenao sur Tempo Afrique TV, la station de l'éveil du continent africain.